Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
Are you ready to level up your team skill development? Well, Bology is here to support you in driving accountability and skill development. The Bology app is more than just tracking. It's a resource for enhancing skills, knowledge, and mindset across your program. Join coaches all across the country using Bology to simplify training and empower your athletes. Let's build consistency, accountability, and skill development together.
Just went through some of your coaching background and all the experience that you had, and then you doing something like this, but also with a pen and a napkin.com. I mean, I noticed all the resources on there, like the hours that you've spent coaching high achievers and studying high achievers. That has to be insane. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your daily habits that set you up for success.
Well, I think one of the big things that I do, I don't know how many things I do well, but I think one of the things that I do very well is I'm really organized. I really try to stay on top of it. I've got my planner here. There's not very many better feelings in this world than making a list and then having that entire list scratched out by the end of the day. Like that's great. But I think just having a plan, Don Meyer, who is one of my coaching heroes, he used to say, plan your night, or plan your day the night before, plan your week on Sunday. And that's something that really stuck with me. And I think that if you're going to be efficient and people listening to this are going to be basketball coaches or coaches of other types. A lot of people are educators. I think one of the things, I come from a family of educators. My grandmother was a teacher. My dad's a teacher. My brother's a teacher. My son's going to be a teacher. One of our kids is going to be a teacher. You got to take care of that classroom stuff first. I mean, a big way that you can get in trouble as a coach is be a bad teacher in the classroom. Yeah. And so I've always taken pride in, being really organized in that regard, taking care of that stuff. And one of the keys to that, and it's just natural human instinct, is the stuff I don't like to do, I do that first. Like and here's the thing that will get me out of education. I'm probably too committed to education. I got to ride it out at this point, but I hate grading. Like, and I just hate it. I hate it. And even not so much grading, like multiple choice quizzes or multiple choice tests or anything like that. But reading like essays, that is, if I want to read something, I want to read what I want to read, and that's hard for me. And so what I do is when I know I've got those assignments coming up and I know it's part of my job, I know it's part of helping the kids get better as students, I grade that stuff right away. I turn around and get it done because I know the longer I let it sit there, even if it's a day, the harder it's going to be to come back to that, because it's so easy to push that off. So I think I do that well. I like to journal.
Let me jump in right there before you move on to the next one, because I think you're right on the money with organization, but also with getting that hard thing done first. You probably heard that term, eat the frog, like that Tyler Costin talked about that. First thing you got to do in your day is eat the frog, get that thing done, because we talk to our players, we talk to our students about procrastination so much. And yet I think sometimes as teachers, coaches, man, we're just as guilty of it, because if we're not organized, going back to organization, if we're not organized with our day and know how we're going to spend that time, it's really easy for distractions to come up and things to start cluttering. Where after the course of the day goes by and my wife asks me how it was, I say, I think I got a lot done. I know I was doing stuff. I'm just not sure what it was. That's the day that we got to be careful of.
Yeah. Well, as Bill Parcells says, you plan your day and then 10 things are going to come up that you didn't anticipate coming up. I mean, that's just part of being a leader. So you have to accept that, you think you've got your day ready to go, and then, Billy gets in trouble in history classes, so he's going to be a half hour late because he's got to serve a detention. How are you going to handle that? You get such and such email from a parent or another coach calls you and says, hey, how do we scout West High for Friday night, or all those type of things. And so I think to keep the main thing, you've got to be really, really organized, and you got to stay on top of that. And I'd like to think I did a really good job of that. Keeping balance. I think in my 28 years, we raised our kids through that whole time. And there were very few times where I really felt like I shorted my kids, my wife, my family life. There were times, don't get me wrong, but they were few and far between, because I really felt like I was really organized on what I got done. I needed to get done. If I needed to put extra time into things, I would communicate it well with my family, with my kids. I would include my kids within the conversation. Hey, Carter, unfortunately, I'm going to miss your game on Saturday morning because we've got shoot around. But I'm going to be there right with you, that type of a thing. And so I think that organizational piece, I think if you don't have an organizational piece, and what works for Matt Saman works for Matt Saman, what works for Marty Plum works for Marty Plum. You've got to find your system. You got to find what works for you and make it work, but you got to stay organized. And I think if there's one daily habit that I think I'm really, really good at, I think that would be it. I mean, I really do. I feel confident in saying that.
And I think you're right on the money with how important it is, because you mentioned, as coaches, especially those of us that are still in the classroom. I mean, I do have to show up at my study hall, and I have to make sure they're working, but that's really it. But when you do have those responsibilities in the classroom, yeah, you don't want, if your passion, your love is basketball, you don't want to get fired because of that part.
Yeah.
And then to kind of take that into the coaching world, though, you can be charismatic, you can have great relationships with kids, you can have a great basketball mind, but if you're not organized, that's going to turn the players, that's going to turn parents against you really quick.
They're going to see it. Yeah, they're going to see that. They're going to know. They're going to know who's got it together and who doesn't. And one of the things that I would recommend to any coach is control all the things that you can control. I mean, so you tell your team, we can control our attitude, we can control our effort, we can control, boxing out. Now, we can't control, if you're 5'10" and the dude you're guarding is 6'5", we can't control that, but let's, so forth and so on. I mean, as a coach, as a teacher, as an employee, you can control your organization. You can control having a good scout ready to go. You could, all of those elements along the way. So if you're telling your players, Billy, you got to come in ready to practice. You got to get out of there ready to get after it, blah, blah, blah. And you're coming to practice consistently without an organized practice plan, without knowing what direction you want to take the program, what's your vision for the program, what's your vision for your youth program, all those other things. Man, the player's going to pick up on that very, very quickly. And by proxy, that's going to get to the dinner table. And that dinner table can be such a positive influence. And it can be, more importantly for a lot of us, it can become such a negative influence in a very short amount of time. And so it's a tough battle to fight for all of us. And so you've got to control all those things that you possibly can. And I just think it's so important that you do that. And for me, I was hyper aware. I was hyper influence. It was just something I was so focused on, is everything I can control with my players, control with my parents, control with my administration. Am I still going to make mistakes? Absolutely. And I did, without a doubt. But as I became more seasoned and experienced, we don't use the O word at a pen and a napkin, the O word that ends with a D and there's an L in the middle. More seasoned and experienced, you got more. I got much better at those type of things. The mistakes that I made when I was 30, completely different than the mistakes that I made when I was 50. And if I didn't, I'm an idiot. I'm a moron because I haven't learned anything. I mean, truthfully, right. You're an idiot. So I think those are the things that I think the biggest thing you can do as a coach in so many ways is if you're gonna talk the talk, you sure as heck better walk the walk. And I feel very confident about that. I feel extremely confident about that. That we never came into a practice unprepared. We never came into a game unprepared. We knew our scout. We knew where we were supposed to be at. Again, did we make mistakes? Absolutely. Should we have gone man when we went zone? Absolutely. But it was never because of lack of preparation.
And to that point right there, I think you'll end up having more grace from people. Love to throw that word around,
Yeah.
but you'll have more grace from your players and parents on some of those things when it's not a pattern of, oh, here we go again. He missed it again. Why are we hearing about this late again? A great example for me
Mm-hmm.
is 2 years ago, we had a really strong senior class and their parents were really involved. Awesome parents. It was their year to get new uniforms. We ordered from Nike. And if anybody's ever done that before, there's something happened out there to where, man, October flies by, November, all of a sudden, I hear in January they're not coming till March. So I had to tell the senior class, sorry guys, like they're just not going to come in. I ordered them on time, everything, and
Yeah.
they were disappointed, and parents were, but there wasn't a like
Outrage.
mutiny
Yeah.
or how we're going to the AD. This is ridiculous, because I had all my other stuff together where they could say, yeah, this is just, I mean, this is truly out of his control, because he is in control of all the things that he can be. And
Yeah.
I don't mean to keep hitting this point, but I really think
No, it's a
for
good point. It's
younger
important.
coaches, we have to, if there's one thing I've learned from select ball, it's the difference between organized and unorganized coaches. You really see it as
Yeah.
a parent there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's like you're saying there, getting out a weekly planner. Uh, we would try to have our practice schedule for the entire year. So in Nebraska, we would start mid-November, third week of November. Um, and so we would want our practice plans, our practice times settled by at the latest mid-October. And I would want to know, okay, here's our moratorium dates for Christmas. If you're going on vacation, if you're going to see grandpa and grandma, that's great. You got 5 days. We can't practice for 5 days. State rule. But when we come back on that sixth day and we're practicing, and again, it was very clearly communicated. And I would try to explain those little things with parents. As basketball coaches, we deal with the two big holidays. We deal with Thanksgiving and we deal with Christmas, and,
Yep.
and so those are really tough to navigate. And I'm just using this as an example. And Thanksgiving's a little bit tougher because it's a shorter holiday season, so to speak. And if you're in Nebraska or Iowa, we've got a really big football game that people want to go to on that Black Friday. And I mean that in all seriousness. So I
Yeah.
would often say, hey, on Friday of Black Friday, we're not going to practice. The football game is slated to kick off at 11 o'clock in Lincoln. Let's say they're playing in Nebraska. So we're not going to practice until, sorry about that. We're not going to practice till 6. We're not going to practice till 6. Go to the football game. If you're going to be late coming back from the football game, just text me. Let me know that you're on the way because of traffic, those type of things. So I want to work with you. I want to make sure that you guys can go to the football game and enjoy it, and those type of things. And again, those situations where you can have that grace from people. I think it's so vitally important that again, it's controllable. It's so easy. And yeah, it takes forethought. You got to think ahead. You got to, you got to think big picture. But man, that can do so many positive things for you. I mean, it really, really can.
Here's an idea. Let's try to set our parents up for success. And the way that we do that is we give them a lot of time to get to see what they need to have scheduled to make
Yep.
plans with their families. And so
Yeah.
one thing I've started doing the last few years is probably around early to mid October, I mean, or August, early to mid August, I send to the parents that I believe will be on varsity, I send an email out that has when we start, because especially for those seniors, it never fails. I'll get, because they're all scrambling for the SATs or the
Yep.
ACT dates. And
Yep.
so even though I've told them a long time, or they usually know when the season starts, I'll always get those questions. So it's like a preemptive strike. I'm going to send out this email that has the start date of practice, when Thanksgiving is, and what days we'll
Yep.
get off,
Yep.
our out of town tournaments and what weekends those are going to be, so they can plan. But to me, it's like all of those. I want to deposit. I want
Yep.
deposit. I want to
Yep.
deposit
Yep.
because come November, yeah, I'm
You
going to
have to
be
take some
withdrawing a
withdrawals.
lot.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. And even like the same thing with the summer. Like I always wanted to have all our summer stuff planned by April 15th. That was, easy to remember, tax day. I mean, if possible, April 1st, but, April 15th at the latest. And hey, if you've got a club thing, or if I find out, and what I would often try to do, sometimes to success, sometimes to failure, send something out to all the returning parents. You know, what big things do you have going on this summer? Are there any dates that we need to avoid? And you wait a week, 10 days, get that back, and then you start piecing everything together. Um, and then, of course, inevitably, you put something out there. Well, we can't, and then you get fired. Well, we can't make it that day. It's like, well, I asked you for this 3 weeks ago. But yeah, that
Yeah.
is what it is. I understand. But again, those are things that you can do and say, hey, here's a great time for everybody to go on vacation if possible. And obviously, if you've scheduled the dream vacation to Hawaii and we've got a team camp scheduled on that date, you better go to Hawaii. And if you're not going to
Yeah.
go to Hawaii, you could stay here and play at the team camp, and I'll go to Hawaii for you. Type of, But again, control
And you
what you.
got to mean that. You got to
Yeah,
mean that though too. They can't be passive aggressive, or there can't be this
yeah,
idea from the player or the family that there will be a consequence at some point for us
yeah.
missing this. Because and man, it's so easy to do that. It's so easy to say it in a way, or actually have consequences when they do come back. And I do think, I mean, not wanting to use that O word, but the farther
Seasoned
along
and
I get with
experienced.
this,
Seasoned
the
and
more
experienced.
experience,
Yeah.
the longer I do it. And especially it really changes for me, coach. Like I have an 18-year-old now,
Yep.
and taking him through this whole high school, having to go home and have my wife say, why are we just hearing about this now?
Yep.
Like learning through it that way. That's been an eye-opening experience for me, and of ways that I used to just not consider what all they had going on, because as a less experienced, newer coach, you just you don't have that, those experiences to look back on it, and how much it impacted you and your family. And but
Hmm.
now it's trying to be better for them. Of, hey, you got something with your family, go do that. And I, you open your eyes, so there's no wink, there's nothing passive aggressive about it.
Yeah.
And again, it's just another deposit.
Yep. Yep. How much has I assume is your son playing for you?
He's a senior. Yep.
Yeah. 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 How much has that changed your coaching philosophy?
I think I think PGC helped me a lot, when I started with them, or I directed for them. And that was my first summer here. So that's 10 years ago is when I
Mhm.
got plugged back in with them. That was probably one of the biggest things that changed me from wanting to be, and not, instead of being Dave Bliss or Bobby Knight. Dave Bliss was my college coach for 3 years. Instead
Mhm.
of being him, now I want to be more like Scott Drew, who I played
Yeah.
for 1 year. And so that was the big change. But with Landon, it's really been uh, eye opening for me of, am I treating every player fairly? Like not the same, but fairly. So like for him, I've had to work at not letting my expectations for him just be way different than everybody else. I don't
Sure.
know if I've always succeeded in that, and we've had definitely some times where maybe I've said one or two things I know that I regret. My wife has kind of let me know, because they have a really strong relationship. Of, man, when you said that, it kind of cut him pretty hard. Damn, like dang it, like that's not really what I meant. I think
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm way more careful about really saying what I mean, and not cutting too deep with anything, and making sure to celebrate, because I think I'm way more comfortable telling them what they need to do better, and then I miss a lot the things that they're doing right that I could just celebrate. And I
Yeah.
think having him in the program kind of magnified that for me.
Gotcha. Sorry. bad habit of asking the questions. You're supposed to be asking me the questions, but that
You know
popped.
what? It's kind of fun. I like you. I don't really. I like to listen, and I ask some follow up questions and stuff though. So, but I don't really get many thrown back at me like that. If it
Yeah.
ever starts going too long, just have a pen, and just start clicking it.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.